Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. So the cantor and I, last week, some of us were here for the beginning of Sukkot, and we had a cozy bunch then too, and we decided to move into the sukkah. So we have a couple of different options. There's nobody who's joining us online right now, so we can go through and we can have our tefillah, we can have our service. There are a couple of prayers that we don't say when we don't have a minyan, and we don't have a minyan this morning. Even counting the Torah, we're close, right? We're 3, 5, 7, 8, right? So without a minyan, there are a couple of prayers that we don't say. So we can go through and we can have our prayer service, or we can have a discussion if you would like. We can sing some and we can have a discussion. I have a text for Sukkot that around Ecclesiastes, a time for everything. So you tell me what you would prefer this morning. If we don't have any people joining us online, if you would like to have a service, we are more than happy and both here to do that. Or if you would like to maybe sing a little bit and then have a text discussion, we can do that. So we have text discussion. Text discussion. So why don't we do, yes, is everybody okay with that? Okay, so let's do that. Let's Cantor can choose some of our opening songs, maybe Modeh Ani or Ma Tovu or Ma Gadlu that you had, anything that you want. Let's sing a little bit and then we'll sit together and we'll study the text. We can sit inside or we can sit outside. Your call too. Inside. I see inside. I see inside. So we'll sit inside and have that conversation. So let's do that. And that's why I asked if nobody had any Kaddish to say at all. And Bets, I would say that if by 10 to 11 nobody's here at all on Zoom, you can shut it down and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, thanks, Bets. Thanks. So tell us where you are. Tell us where you are.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's start with Modeh Ani. It's on page 186. 186, Modeh Ani. Modeh Ani lefanecha.
I was just going to say, we talked about, Susan, you weren't there, but we actually talked about Elohai Neshama, the soul that you have given me, oh God, is a pure one. It's on page 196, and we had an interesting conversation about how we were born, right? And if we were all born with purity, or if we need to strive for something, or both, perhaps. And we talked about Elohai Neshama, so it's perfect. Page 196 is where you'll find the text.
Neshama
And the cantor will take requests. So tell us one more morning worship song you would like to sing, or what else do you? Pick a favorite. Pick a favorite. Which one? Do you have a particular Oseh Shalom that you like?
The Oseh Shalom Bimrama, that one.
We could do a medley of Oseh Shaloms, right? Yeah.
Okay, let me see my medley here.
Oseh Shalom.
Yes. Well, let's start with the slow and then go to the next one. Oseh Shalom Bimrama, Huyaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Israel, Ve'imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Israel, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. And the next Oseh Shalom that Rabbi proposed is by Debbie Friedman. Oseh Shalom bimrama, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom bimrama, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom bimrama, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. So one personal line.
Yes, tell us who's joining us online. Hi, Marie. We just had Marie in Torah study with us. Good to have you back, Marie.
Hey, everybody.
She left to come back. I like that. I like that. So we, unless there are any other, I feel like you need to have like a tip cup on your lectern, right? For requests, not on Shabbat. We know, not on Shabbat. Any other final Shabbat morning request? Or a song that you really hope we can sing and kind of add some arms around today. We've got two. Hine Matov, what were you going to say?
Okay.
So Hine Matov and Ein Kelohenu.
So which Hine Matov? Okay, got it. Okay, Hine Matov de Ein Kelohenu. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet ha'im gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet ha'im gam yachad. Hine Matov, Hine Matov. Yanai, 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 yanai. Hine Matov, Hine Matov. Yanai, 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 yanai. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet ha'im gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet ha'im gam yachad.
And Ein Kelohenu is found on page 626. 626 is where you'll find the text.
Right, so Ein Kelohenu we sang it on Rosh Hashanah morning, I believe. Second day Rosh Hashanah.
Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Adonenu, Mi Malkeinu, Mi Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Nod El Eloheinu, Nod El Adonenu, Nod El Malkeinu, Nod El Mashiachenu, Oy Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Mashiachenu, hey, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Mashiachenu, Enke Eloheinu, Enke Adonenu, Enke Malkeinu, Enke Mashiachenu. Big finish. Big finish. That was the hay. It was the hay. The other one that you're talking about was the traditional. Is it the Enke Eloheinu? That's the traditional one. This is the one that we were, or was that the one? This is the one?
The
The
Karlbach.
Karlbach one, yeah, that's right. It's the one that's got life. It's got a different kind of life, right, than the traditional one that I think a lot of us grew up with at camp, right?
Well,
Right.
so Enke Eloheinu, the traditional Enke Eloheinu, it's a drinking song.
Yes, it is. I was gonna say, it always has like a, yeah.
German.
You need a, yeah, that's right. Well, thank you. It's a good way to start. So we have someone online. So I thought, hi Marie, we're happy to have you with us online, that we will, look, it is customary. Thanks, Cantor. It's customary to read from the book of Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes during Sukkot. And there are some who wonder why Ecclesiastes. Anybody know why we read Ecclesiastes during Sukkot? You're going to love the reason. Does anybody know? Cantor, do you remember? I'll tell them, but I want to be part of the big reveal. But do you remember why?
There is a different trope.
Well, there's a different trope for sure. So here is all of the other books were already placed as being read in public. So we read on Purim, we read the other Megillah, right? We read Esther. On Tisha B'Av, we read Lamentations, we read from Eicha. On Pesach, we read from Shira Shirim, from Song of Songs. And on Shavuot, we read from Ruth. So the only one left, I love this, the only one left was Ecclesiastes, right? So it is the most, it's such a truthful and Jewish answer, right? So out of the ones that we find left, we have Ecclesiastes, but as only the rabbis can, they spin beautiful meaning from it. It is attributed to Solomon, right? And a king descended from David, probably written about the 3rd century before the Common Era or so. It's got such a unique construction. You've heard it before. You hear it at most funerals, actually. There is a time for everything. This is a passage that we read often. But the book of Ecclesiastes, when you think about the holiday of Sukkot, if I were to ask you right now, when you think about Sukkot, just kind of, if I said word association, Sukkot, what would you say? Say again? Harvest. What else? Desert, house. Huts, okay. The change in seasons, right? We're seeing it. I turned around at some point, you're right, there's like no place like our sanctuary, right? You literally see the whole outdoors, right? And you see not only the colors, but you see the leaves starting to fall as well, right? So we see the turn of the season, right? So there's a marked shift in our prayers as well, where we change our, in the Amidah, what we pray for as well, right after, right at Simchat Torah as well. What else? Sukkot, what else comes to mind? Etrog and lulav, right? The 4 species, right? The 4 different kinds of learners that we are, the parts of our body that are represented in the lulav and the etrog, how it hits all of our senses, right? What else? Anything else? Hospitality, ushpizin, right? Welcoming in guests, yeah. Tell us more about this path of humanness.
Giving, receiving, and it makes us alive.
Right.
It's learning to live in this world, learning to be aware that in every season there's opportunity.
Right. So right, it's a time, for those who are joining us from home, it is the change, right? It is the change and how we learn, and that we're always changing and growing, using the metaphor of seasons, but really as a metaphor more broadly, right? Yeah, Liz, you know what, Bets, do you happen to have a microphone? I wonder, just so that Marie can hear at home, otherwise we're just heard in here. The concept of the cycle, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. The cycle, right? How the cycle, different parts might be highlighted or feel like they're highlighted, but the circuitous kind of nature in the best of ways, right? When we talk about, as you just did, right, a beautiful birth that is tightly wed to sadness and to death in the same family, right? And that cycle of the life cycle, Marlene, did you want to add something?
You said fall harvest.
So,
I don't know if we said fall harvest because, sometimes fall we think of death, but it's a harvest.
Right. Fall harvest and the idea of what needs to happen in nature to continue, right? Not just the ingathering, and that's one of the things that we talk about for Sukkot, the ingathering, right? That this is a time, right, that typically we turn inwards as the days are getting colder, but a challenge as well for us to turn inwards and not to remain isolated, right? So that we can continue to grow and to be a part of growth in the community, right? So the book
and rest,
but not hibernation, right? So we were talking about this morning in Torah study. We're never meant to be completely on our own, right? We're meant to take some time on our own and maybe to retreat somewhat, but to do so in order to be bountiful in community, right? Yeah, Shelley, please.
It's a time to go inward and think, you were talking about going into the woods and being alone.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a season where we tend to do that. And with spring comes our rebirth.
Right.
Yeah.
I
like this season.
Yes, I like the seasons too. It was very confusing for me at the beginning of my career when I served out west in California. And growing up in the Northeast my whole life, and then spending 4 years there, it was confusing. It was confusing not to see the change in seasons. It was confusing not to have that inward turn, to spend a little bit more time indoors and then to, as you say, Shelley, to kind of burst forth in the spring, right? And be out again, and right. And that rhythm is very familiar and quite different when you're in a climate that is more traditionally warm year round. Yeah, Shoshana, please.
I was just wondering, does Israel have the 4 distinct seasons like we have here?
They have seasons. They do. They have seasons there. They're depending on if you're in the north or the south. They are not as acute as they are here in Jerusalem. I don't know if when the cantor was there, but in Jerusalem, it has been known to snow in the winter, but not a Rochester snow, right? Like a snow that leaves most of the city paralyzed. Some of you have heard me say this before, but when I lived there 2 separate years. I lived there in 89, 90, and then in 92 and 93. I think it must have been the first year I lived there. They had a freak snow and they weren't at all ready for it. And the two things that I remember vividly was people putting plastic bags with rubber bands around their shoes because they didn't have snow boots that were like, right, they just didn't have, right? It was something that my grandparents, Oliver Shalom in Poland would have done, right? Like like you don't have, you make do, right? So they took like supermarket bags, right? That was the first thing. And they had no capacity to plow the streets because they didn't have snow plows. So they brought out the tanks. They brought out the army tanks. Must have been the first year I lived there. They brought out the army tanks to just kind of smush down to pack the snow, right? So how we do it. Yeah, Liz, please just take the microphone.
I was in Jerusalem once when it snowed. It was wintertime, and I was with my niece and her daughters.
Yeah.
And the girls are running around like this,
Yeah, right. Right.
catching the snowflakes on
Yeah,
their tongues. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just good, right? So the book of Ecclesiastes that we read at Sukkot time is quite interestingly, it is a philosophical account of the attempt to find happiness by a man who has everything. And that's what we're taught about Ecclesiastes. It's quite short. It's only about 12 chapters long. It's one of the literature's earliest encounters between faith and reason. That's like a perfect, couldn't come more perfectly. Is it snow? No, I hope not. Probably some rain. It is one of the literature's earliest encounters between faith and reason, and the author really struggles to believe that life is meaningful despite his experience of the world, right? So this is his search for meaning. And it's especially important when we look at this cycle of seasons and life and mortality, which is also interesting right after the High Holy Days. So much of our liturgy is about that. And how Solomon's voice really carries importance for us as a modern reader and the inquiries that he makes. So that would be wonderful. Let me give, yeah, please. That would be wonderful. I would love that. Yeah, to chant some of it. So it's really, it is for us to explore the possible futility that I think many of us wrestle with mundane pursuits and pleasures. What is the purpose of the things, right? This morning in Torah study, we were talking about coveting, right? We were looking at the 10 Commandments and we were talking about coveting, right? We didn't go to that next step, which is why do we covet? One of the classmates talked about, we can covet, and that can be actually inspiring. We can say, I want to earn more to have what my neighbor has, right? But we didn't go to that next step, which is why do you need more? Right? What is worthwhile about having more or better, right? Right. So this is really what the author of Kohelet of Ecclesiastes wrote about in a time of year when we see, as we do outside, how things are starting to kind of move inward a little bit more, as each of you has said. And Kohelet shakes really our contentment with the reminder that mundane accomplishments are, or more pedestrian, maybe not so negative, but more pedestrian matters really are fleeting, right? They are fleeting, and right, that ties right into the impermanence of the sukkah, right? And the very, the lack of material that we have when we talk, in the fragility, right, of the sukkah that's just got, kind of very soft walls on the side and no substantial covering, but this idea of fragility and impermanence. And what do we truly need? Yes, Liz, please.
Think of the way that, sorry, it makes me think of the way that Buddhist monks build a mandala out of sand.
Yes.
And they spend weeks or months or whatever, and then
Right.
it's beautiful and yet it's impermanent.
Right. And that's right. It's not something that we talk about a lot in Judaism, this idea of impermanence, right? Especially when we think about naming trees in forests and sanctuaries, not ours, right? But sanctuaries that have names and classrooms that have names, right? What, to what end? What is that line between building a foundation of a place and contributing to a foundation and the beauty of a place versus the things that are fleeting, as Kohelet points to. Yeah, please, Susan.
I was just thinking about the fact that one side of these, these equations inspires the other, and that there's sort of comfort. I was in that, a time to love and a time to hate.
Mhm.
Hate's a burden. Love is a joy. And well, I mean, I think if you, for the average human being, there are people who love to hate, I guess.
Mhm.
But you can't, hate is, you just want, after a while, it's a burden, and most people would want to put it down. And to put it down, you turn to the more positive love. You can't get one without the other.
Right. And we'll look at the text in just a second from Ecclesiastes, right? But what is the very fragile balance that we strive to make, rather, right? To strike that balance, right? Between having the right amount of both. You use love and hate. I would even take a step back to something more mundane, right? How much do we need? Right, that is worthwhile, and to what end, right? And right, not that we're supposed to, Judaism doesn't teach that we should live an ascetic life, right? We're not supposed to live in poverty and take vows of poverty. We're supposed to live with what we need, right? To be happy with our lot, right? And at the same time, right, what is that line between being happy with your lot and striving? Right? Judaism doesn't say just, take it as it comes, right? So how do we understand that? So Shelley, and then let's hear a little bit of Kohelet, and then we'll go to the sheet that you have in front of you.
So my feeling is when you're striving, or when you're looking at another family, it might show you how they are more, the family is more together, is more experiencing love and quality relationships. I don't think that the coveting necessarily has to be negative. It can be for positive. Improving the quality of others' lives, improving the quality of community, trying to improve the quality of our country, the universe, our nature. I don't know. I really have to think of it in terms of positivity.
I think we can think of it. I think that's maybe the cautionary tale of Kohelet, right? A little cart before the horse, but that's maybe in part, right? Why do we strive? Why do we covet, right? Why do we want what our neighbors, right? Why such a stern warning, right, in Exodus, right? Is it just for acquisition, right? Is it just so that we can say we have more and more and more, or do we want to have more and more and more to be able to give? I remember very clearly the neighbors who were very actively Christian and very involved in their faith community, and used to leave their home open. They would leave their doors unlocked. And I remember saying, are you crazy? Right? Like that's just dangerous. And they said, well, what could happen? And I said, well, someone could come in and steal everything. And they said, well, then clearly they need. This is like here in my life in Rochester, right? And they were saying, this isn't, in Shtetl, in the Shtetl somewhere, right? This is here in Rochester, where they said, what we have is it's just ours on loan, right? And it was a professional couple. They had children, whatever. I mean, the children piece was another risk that, I had a different concern at night and whatever. But in terms of their stuff, their material wealth, they didn't have a need to hold on to it, right? And it was startling, right? It was awe-inspiring.
It reminds me of the Native American belief that the earth is just on loan.
Yes,
So and we should be taking care of it as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And the idea
yeah, hold on 1 second, yeah.
the idea of accumulating,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense because it's all lent to
Right.
us.
Right.
home was in the city on Harvard Street. And we bought the house. And when we sold it, we had no idea where the key was. We never locked our door. And when we moved to Brighton, we never locked our door. I mean, if someone's going to burglarize you or has need, in both instances, it never happened. So I think you have to have faith too. I don't think you have to live in fear. Why would you live in fear? No. I don't know who to hand it to.
I think a lot has to do with how you grow up. I grew up in Croton, which is now a very wealthy suburb. In those days, it was a relatively small town. I don't think anybody locked their doors. I know we didn't. And when I moved to Rochester and people, were shocked that I didn't lock my doors. It just didn't occur to me to lock my door. It was strange.
And living in New York, right? Some of us who lived in New York City, right? Who had triple locks on our door, right? Who had triple locks, yeah.
I once spent a night with my college roommate who lived in the Bronx. And I used to work for my dad on Saturdays in Manhattan. So I had to get up early. I couldn't get out of the door.
Right.
I finally had to wake somebody up because it was such a conflict.
Right.
Well, I see your stories of not locking your door, and I'll counter with when I grew up, apparently my dad never locked his car when it was in our driveway, right up until the point someone broke into our car and stole, I have no idea actually what they stole, but they stole enough stuff to convince my dad to start locking his car. And on a similar but pettier note, I have a storage locker in my apartment in the laundry room, which is a public area. And I also never locked it right up until someone stole my detergent and I couldn't do laundry.
Your detergent, right?
Yeah. And then I was like if they borrowed it and put it back, like used it for a load, I wouldn't have cared, but they stole the whole freaking bottle.
Right.
And so then I started locking it because that's an expensive bottle and I don't want to be replacing it every week.
Right. Okay, last word, and then we'll get to our text.
Well, I was rushing here the other day. I can't remember which of the many activities, and I couldn't find my house key. And I thought, so I left. And if something got stolen, I don't have much valuable, but anyway, if something got stolen, but bodily harm is what I would be concerned about.
Danger.
That's a whole other.
Right. Stuff is different than physical harm, right? And I think amplified as we age, or for those of us who have children, right? I think all of that there are different twists and turns to that, right? Yeah, so let's hear a little bit of Kohelet, and then the sheet that you have in front of you, we'll take a look at that for a couple of minutes as well.
So just, we also like in Baltimore had a robbery just before we moved here. And I also don't like to lock stuff. I mean, David is like locks everything, he's very particular. So I didn't lock my car. I don't lock my car. So people at night, some people open my car. I mean, it was open and they pressed the garage opener. And they got to the garage and I didn't close the garage door that from home to garage. So they went in and my purse always stands there. They took my purse. It was at night, we didn't hear. But thank God we didn't hear. Can you imagine if we would wake up and go down or confront them? I mean, I'm sure they were armed. I mean, and then they found them. And then they wanted us to come from here to like testify. We said, it's fine, we're not coming. But it was dangerous. Like we would wake up, the kids were sleeping on the second floor, So, okay, so from sadness to good stuff, right?
Which is very, very Ecclesiastes, yeah.
I'll just chant what Rabbi put here, this poem from Ecclesiastes in Hebrew and in a special trope. לקוזמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים, עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לטעת ועת לקום נטוע, עת לחרוק ועת לרפוא, עת לפרוץ, עת למנות, עת לבכות, ועת לשחוק, עת צפות ועת רכות, עת להשליך אבנים. Well, you got the taste. I don't have to do the whole thing.
No, it's good. It's right. It sounds so different, doesn't it, from anything else that we hear, right? As the cantor mentioned, it's a different trope. It's quite literally a different trope.
It's the same trope that you said for wedding ceremony.
Yes, yes. Marlene, just take the microphone.
I'm just curious, when it's not the regular trope for the festivals and holy days, is it always the same alternate trope, or is there a different trope for each holiday?
Different trope. There are 6 different systems, right? So Ecclesiastes, Shir HaShirim, and
Eicha, Lamentations.
Lamentation has different,
Yeah.
but Ecclesiastes, which is Kohelet, Shir HaShirim, and Ruth, 3 of them have the same trope, which is this one. Right, then there is Holiday trope, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, then Purim, Esther, right, and what else? Eicha, Lamentation trope, Torah, Haftarah, so 6 altogether.
Thank you.
Just keeps it fresh. The rabbis thought they'd keep it fresh.
Right, in Orthodox synagogue, they read from Torah, and then they read additional scroll, which is Ecclesiastes for Sukkot.
Right. So Ecclesiastes you wouldn't find in our Torah scroll, right? All of the other scrolls, right? Esther, Lamentation, Song of Songs, Ruth, and Ecclesiastes are all secondary. They're separate scrolls entirely, right? So we bring out, right? You've seen it Purim time. We bring out another whole scroll. So what the cantor just chanted, thank you. What the cantor just chanted from Ecclesiastes 3, the very beginning, 1, which isn't reflected on this page, really starts with Kohelet saying, you don't look on your page, it's not there. Chapter 1, verse 2 is utter futility, says Kohelet, utter futility, all is futile. Right? That's how it starts in chapter 1. Everything is useless, everything is useless, everything is impermanent, depending on how you translate it, nothing endures, right? And that's where Kohelet starts, and then we move into chapter 3, which is where we pick up here. So I wonder if somebody would like to read 3:1. Yeah, do you want to read 3:1? It's in the second box in the English, yeah.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Did you want me to?
Yep, you can read the whole thing if you don't mind,
All
yeah.
A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but there isn't a time that I hear this that I don't go, huh. Right? There's something different that catches me. I am usually in your spot where I'm reading it, and for me, it's very nice to hear it and to pick up a different piece. So I wonder, just on the shot level, on the surface level, and Bets, do they have it at home as well? Are they saying, thank you, right? I wonder, just on the surface level, what, if anything, has caught your attention just from, and you've heard it before. Yeah, Shoshana, please.
Some of these things are very negative.
Yes.
To kill, a
hate.
time to hate,
Yeah.
a time to, time for war. I really wonder what some of the other ones, casting away and gathering stones, I'm not quite sure what those are about, but it's, some of these things are the things that I feel like, you're not supposed to do those. And then it's like, no, you sometimes.
Right. Is this actually permission to have, right? Does this say, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Or this is human nature. And what do you think? What do you think to Shoshana's question? Are you surprised to read the negative in here?
No, I'm not surprised at all. As long as we're human beings, we have, I forget how you say it in Hebrew. but it-
Yetzer hara and Yetzer tov. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
who we are.
Yeah. So an acknowledgement, maybe an acknowledgement of how and who we
Absolutely.
are. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And please, Marie and anybody else who might be joining us at home, right, please feel free. Are they on their, yeah? Just
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in whenever you want, okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just gonna say that we never know in our own life which one of these seasons is gonna show up and how we're gonna have to deal with it.
Aha, beautiful, right? Did you say we never know when one of these seasons might show up?
Right, we just, right, to me, it's kind of like life. I mean, things could happen that could really bring a lot of joy to our life and things that can bring a lot of sadness. And it's just kind of reminds us that there's impermanence in life in general for each of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Marlene, go ahead.
I didn't, bless you. I didn't read it so much as, bad angel, good angel. I read it as things that might be necessary, like it might be time to mourn, or kill doesn't say murder,
All right.
and war, defending yourself.
Right.
I didn't read it as bad behavior versus good
Right.
behavior.
Right. We say about Amalek, right? Imach Shemo, right? That we should blot out his name, right? That doesn't say you should try to, what's the word with a prisoner, when you try to rehabilitate, thank you. When you try to rehabilitate somebody, right? It doesn't say that everybody is, right? Right? This is always where it goes, is a Hitler, redeemable, right? Right, so yes, go ahead, Susan.
I was just thinking about the tug of war between each part of each line. And, there's a time to be born and a time to die. There's that prayer that always moves me, would you, if each of us could be immortal, if being immortal meant that there would be no birth,
Yeah.
would you take immortality? And I think the answer is no.
Right.
And I guess that's all I have to say. It's that the duality, one provides a backdrop for the other. And sometimes, light is on top of dark, sometimes dark is on top of light, but it's in that contrast that the full spectrum of human condition, I guess, is expressed.
Right, a both and, right?
Right.
You used the word contrast, and when you said con, I thought you were going to say context, and I think both would be applicable, right?
Right.
Sometimes they seem like they're at odds with one another, and sometimes they seem very much like they belong together, right? And we need one to understand the other. Now, there are people who certainly, all of us know people who get an undue amount of hardship, and you wonder. I think any of us could say we wonder how so-and-so endures, right?
Mhm.
And we wonder how that is meted out or for what purpose. And I don't think that there could be a plausible answer for that at any point. And perhaps on the well side of things, it's we're more easily able to say there is a reason, right? When things are good enough for us to say it makes sense in context. And I think that's in part what Kohelet, what he tries to address, right? The sense of impermanence and the sense of the seasons, as Marie just said, right? The seasons and they change, and it's not cliche, right? It is understanding how we are in each of those seasons as they change and as we change alongside of it, right? So that first question, what do you think that season means in this context? How do you understand it? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, when you were talking about, would we want to be immortal, and probably not. The very first line that you read struck me that I thought you said, everything's futile, things are transient, and I don't see it as the same.
Mhm.
Just because things are transient doesn't mean our efforts are futile or useless, I think was the word. So accepting that transience is obviously part of life doesn't mean that our efforts to do things are useless.
Agreed.
I think the word was useless.
Agreed, right? There's a marked difference among those words, right? Futile, useless, and impermanent, right? The sukkah, right? We can understand impermanence, but it's not useless or futile unless you're in a hurricane, right? No, I'm serious. God forbid, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of our friends in Florida, right? You know, a sukkah in Florida, probably in certain seasons, is futile. Not probably, is futile, right?
And putting it up might not have been futile. There
Great.
was meaning in putting it
The
up.
the symbolism, right? Right. We could go on and on. Absolutely. That right is a sukkah, you know, meant to provide shelter. Not especially. It's supposed to, you know, to have us remember all of those things, right? What it was like to go through the desert.
It might be the act, not the end result, has meaning, I think.
Yep. Which is kind of the next part of that question, right? What about the meaning of purpose? What about the meaning of purpose in this context? How do you understand it? Right? How do you understand purpose? Do you understand purpose, right? And that's, I think, Marlene, what you're speaking to, right? That there's a purpose, right? That there's meaning to, right? And that's right. That's some of our healing texts talk about, our Jewish healing texts talk about, is your suffering meaningful to you, right? What do you glean from it, right?
One of the hard parts of life, I think, is that these dualities occur rapidly.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, happy one minute, sad the next. And that's hard. So you have to watch carefully.
We don't get to pick our couplet either, right?
Right.
We don't get to look at these pairings and say, I'll take that one, but not that one,
Right.
right? Right. And yes, to your very valid point, they come unbidden. They often come in rapid succession, right? And that is, I think, in part what Kohelet offers us, right? Is to put some arms around it to understand what that could mean. Easier to say from a distance than when we're in the midst of it. Yes, please.
To what Susan was saying, it makes me think, I have over the years very often said to patients, you can't have half your feelings.
Half your what?
Half of your feelings.
Your half of your feelings.
If
right.
you're going to feel happiness, you have to be open to feeling sadness.
Right.
Then if you block off the ability to feel sad, you also deprive yourself of happiness.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Very important. Very important. So when you go down to the second question, you know, which of these pairs of times speaks to you the most? Which would be the pair that you might select? There are so many, right? There are so many good ones.
The one that stuck out to me was a time to weep and a time to laugh.
Yeah.
Somebody, I don't know what people say, something about my sense of humor, and I say, well, if I weren't laughing, I'd be crying.
Right.
And I on a more serious note, for me, humor keeps me afloat. And has been really very, very important in my life. And at one point in my life, when I realized I had lost my sense of humor, then I really worried. So they're both important, but for me, laughter has helped tremendously.
Amen. Amen.
For me, I think what resonates with me is a time to keep silence and a time to speak.
I'm hesitant to say, tell us more.
Well, so I mean, in one way, it's like what I've learned about myself is I think, and I think this happens with a lot of us, we sort of have to cultivate this practice of really listening to other people. Because if you're always thinking, or if you're always talking, or your mind is always busy, you're not always present. And you're not always, sometimes we need to hear what we don't want to hear, right? So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, everything has been exacerbated by the quick response that people are expecting now, right? Whether that is, in person, there's a growing, I think, discomfort with silence. Maybe it's always been there, but I'm more aware of it. But this immediate reaction, right? That you're going to text somebody back right away after they respond, after they send you something, or that will sit in this space. And if I invite a question and there's nothing, that somebody should fill it in, or I should fill it in, without sitting in the silence for a minute to let people figure out what needs to be said. And sometimes the answer, as Marie notes, is nothing. And sometimes for us, not only to hear the difficult things, but to hear the silence. Right, that is, I think, a skill that I aspire to cultivate more deeply every day. Yeah, Shoshana.
Maybe this is the engineer in me, but the one that, well, they're all awesome, but one of the ones that really stood up to me was a time to break down and a time to build up. Actually, sort of like Marie said, just made me think, because I don't see either of those per se as a negative. From an engineering perspective, again, there's times to create new things, and then there's times where you have to clear away the old, essentially. You have to, to get new materials, like you don't have enough, I don't know, rocks, you pull down a building that you don't need and you use it to rebuild something, or simply pulling down old systems that have been replaced with something better, like your HVAC replacement, right? That wasn't breaking down the old, doesn't have to be a negative. Whereas a lot of these, you're sort of thinking like, okay, so one is the bad and one is the good. They can both be
absolutely
the good.
Needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember vividly when my kids were little. I'm guessing it was probably my son had a real need. He was very rambunctious all the time. He had a lot of energy and he was a real sporty kid, and he was not good. The girls could color, or they could do jewelry making or whatever. And Zachary really needed to be engaged in something active. And he had a play date, and we were sitting in this area, and he was in a very distraught, he's full grown now. So I'm not telling tales out of school, but he had a real need to be knocking stuff down. Right, that was it was a developmental stage where he was. I'm going to go with that. And the friend that was with us with her son was a psychologist. And while the four of us were sitting, right, so my son and her son and the two of us, we were all talking, and the boys were kind of sort of doing their parallel play. She took a bunch of blocks and she built up quite a high tower while we were all talking. And she turned to my son and she said, "I see you have a need to knock some things down right now. Here you go." And I thought, oh, God bless you. Right. And he came with such delight and, just right in the middle. And I thought, you know what? That was for him an outlet at that point. He needed not to sit and painstakingly build something. That came later on as he got a little bit older. He just had a need to level something, and she provided for that. And I thought, God bless, right? God bless for knowing, right? Sometimes we have a need to dismantle something for any number of reasons. Sometimes it needs to be dismantled, our systems of oppression. And sometimes we have a need to take something apart to put it back together in a different way. And sometimes we just need the release, right? Sometimes we just need the release of taking apart a closet and putting it back together for some of alphabetizing our CDs, of whatever it is, right? So it's a completed task, right? A completed task, right? Yeah, yeah. And then he started to play baseball, and he's a great hitter, my kid. Yeah, he's a great hitter. Yeah. And interestingly, he moved from hitting to pitching as he got older. I never actually thought about that. Yeah, I never thought about that, which was a different skill to hone in on. But yeah, and that was where he stopped, right? Yeah. So interesting. Yeah.
I was going to say about it not being an engineer, but being an English person. I thought of breaking it down and reconstructing it, not getting rid of it. I was a little bit about getting rid of the old at my age. And so I saw it a little differently. And anyway, just found that interesting. Not.
Well, let's go. We have a couple more minutes. Let's go to the other side of the page and look at 311. I wonder if somebody might, Ecclesiastes 3:11, someone might read that box in the English.
Okay. God has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, God has also set the mystery of the world in their hearts so that no person can understand the work which God has made from beginning to end. More?
No, right. Just good to sit with that for a second, right? Also interesting. Abraham Joshua Heschel goes on to next box down to say, the world presents itself in two ways to me. The world as a thing I own, the world as a mystery I face. What I own is a trifle. What I face is sublime. I'm careful not to waste what I own. I must learn not to miss what I face. We manipulate what is available on the surface of the world. We must also stand in awe before the mystery of the world. Faith is attachment to the meaning beyond the mystery. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful passage. Beautiful passage, right? What do you think of these two passages? Are those good head shakes or bad ones? Yeah, Abraham Joshua Heschel's mind. Yeah, sublime, right? Just profound, right? Profound, yeah. What do you think of these two passages? Just take the microphone.
Well, for me, we can never truly understand all that God creates or wants. That's why we said at Sinai, we will do and we will learn. And that will always be part of our lives. For me, the part of that faith is attachment to the meaning beyond the mystery. That's gorgeous.
Stunning. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is true. Yeah. Your faith comes from within and without, because as we learn more, this is just my belief, because as we learn more, we realize we understand our need to learn more and to attach more. My attachment for me is to God and my Jewishness and the importance of accepting the mystery of it all. I don't know, that's.
Yes. Thank you.
On a related note, actually, I noticed the second portion of 3:11, God has set the mystery of the world in their hearts so that no person can understand. It just seems an interesting choice to me to make that intentional on God's part, that we cannot, and that was apparently an intentional, desirable for some reason thing.
What strikes you about that?
I am all about understanding stuff, partially as an engineer, right? I'm working on a system right now and I have to understand everything that goes into it to make sure it's well built. Literally, I've been spending weeks on this thing. It's driving me nuts. But the point, understanding is I don't even think about the fact that I'm trying to understand something. It's automatic. And the idea that you both can't and shouldn't is just very foreign to me, and I'm confused. Does anyone have a comment?
Not an answer, but a comment. It's the difference between humanity and divinity. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because
Just
God is,
repeat Shoshana's comment so that Marie can hear.
She was saying it's the difference between divinity and humanity. And I said, it sounds like God did this intentionally such that if God had not done this, we could have understood. And that difference between divinity and humanity wouldn't have been there. So why put this difference?
because God wanted the difference. Otherwise, there wouldn't be God. To me.
So, and the other part of your question, also not an answer, but a comment, right? Because it is that is the very question of faith, right? Right, without proof that God exists or that this system makes sense, why do it? Right, I think, which is what every person of faith at some point, or hopefully some points, encounters, right? Encounters, right? And the parallel that gets used is love, right? Like, how do you know that love exists without proof, right? People will say, well, I know because if, someone puts their arms around me or they hold their hand, right? That's not love. A stranger can give you a hug. A stranger can hold your hand, right? You know the difference when you feel someone loves you or when you love somebody, and there's nothing that you could document. That same hug, that same handhold, that same support could be there from someone for whom you have love and they have love for you, as could be from an outside caregiver, right? Who doesn't have a vested interest, right? But this idea in the search for the deepening of your understanding of, without a final, this is why, this is the answer, this is how it works, this is who God is, and this is how the world works, right? Wholly, WH and HO, wholly dissatisfying and entirely satisfying and purposeful, right? Marlene.
I'm very surprised at my reaction to these two passages because I just find them so beautiful and moving. And I think I come from, rationality, critical thinking, blah, 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 most of my life. And, other things are seeping in these days, but it's, it makes sense to me. And it's just very beautiful about the idea of the mystery and the beauty combined in faith.
Amen. Amen.
This kind of takes me back to literally Bereshit, right at the very beginning, where I was just thinking about, Adam and Eve eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, wanting to know more, but God being upset about that, because I think there are some things that I'm not saying we don't have a right to know, but maybe there is that separation there. I don't know.
Maybe there isn't a need to know.
Right.
Maybe their yearning was at odds with the need, right? And that's in part, there's so many pieces of that story for us to learn from, right? But, and not just, right, our tradition doesn't focus on the punishment piece of that. We were talking about original sin in Bible study this morning too, right? Not the punishment piece of that, but how we live our lives, right? And for what purpose, for what meaning. And it is entirely amorphous and abstract for those who are concrete learners. Frustrating, right? Very frustrating. I see, right? And again, kind of, along the lines of what Susan said, it can be a both and I think that's in part the beauty of Ecclesiastes, that those couplets, right? Those pairings are set up intentionally for us to understand them either like this or like this or like this, right?
Faith, I want to tell you that I was in my little temple in Niagara Falls, New York, 75 families. I was about 7 years old, and I read man is a little lower than the angels.
Mm.
And coming from a rather unusual circumstance as a child, how could I not believe? It said I was little lower than an angel. And after all my real-time experiences, this encouraged me to have faith and believe in myself as a human being. And I feel that's when my path to faith really commenced and has been ongoing.
Amen.
Man
Amen.
is just a
Amen.
little lower than the angels.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an engineer, but I do like things to fit. I'm an embroiderer, I'm a knitter, and part of what's so satisfying about it is it's right or it's wrong. And when it's right, it's right. But as I think about this, there's something liberating in the idea that there's a mystery that is beyond us. Somehow, I don't know, I can't even find the word, sort of a sense of relief that I don't have to figure it all out, for whatever that means.
Right, right.
I'll also build off that and circle around and counter my own question. And the meaning of faith. And like you said, it does mean something when you know there's no proof and you decide to believe anyway. In engineering, usually it means you're dumb, but in something like this context, it means, you know, it means a lot to simply make that choice where you accept that you'll never know everything and you choose to go anyways.
And we don't talk about a leap of faith, that it's blind, right? That it's blind following, but that it's an active choice to be critical thinkers, to be rational thinkers. That is the foundation on which our movement is predicated. And at the same time, to be people of faith. And those things didn't at first go easily together. And our pendulum has shifted in Reform Judaism to figure out how best we might walk along that path of being critical thinkers and people of faith at the same time, that they do not need to be at odds with one another, and that it's not a straight path, right? And for those who are accustomed to opening up a map or, you know, kind of putting their information in ways and just getting there, we know sometimes we need to be rerouted, right? Or choose to reroute, right? So anyway, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to do something a little bit different today, and for doing a deeper dive into Kohelet, and for framing it in song and in text. And I'll leave you with the Abraham Joshua text, Abraham Joshua Heschel text, because I also thought it was stunning, just stunning, in a beautiful way to put some frame around Sukkot and this text and this time and our season as it is changing, and we're literally seeing it in front of our eyes. One of my most favorite things about our sanctuary, right after the people who fill it, is what we can see, and I'm always acutely aware when I go into a sanctuary that doesn't have a window, which is 95% of them, right? How very blessed we are to both be in our tradition and at the real world at the same time. It always catches my breath. So thank you for amplifying that even more. So I wonder, Cantor, if there's something that we might sing to bring things together, and then we hope that you'll join us for the oneg in the social hall, or if you want to take your treat, your food into the sukkah, this one or the one in the courtyard to sit in the sukkah to have your goodie as well. Please feel free to do either.
I'm thinking maybe the song Gesher Tzar. Right? The entire world is a bridge, a narrow bridge, but the most important thing is not to be afraid. What page? It's 643. 643.
643.
643.
Yeah.
It's the second song. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's the other interpretation of Gesher Tzarmayot. It's written differently than the song, right? Not to be so overwhelmed that you don't take the first step, which I think fits together with Ecclesiastes as well, right? When we look at those things that might be at odds, not to stop us from trying,
Right.
Yeah.
I knew that there's some message there.
Yeah. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach, and come join us. We'll sit with you and enjoy the sweetness of our learning together and this holiday.
Thank you. What is this, girl? A challah.
Oh, yes, Kiddush and Motzi. Yes, we'll do Kiddush and Motzi. Thank you.
Say Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Good. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem mi'aretz.
Amen. And we'll bring the challah in.
So yesterday, I've been bummed by it. More people than the 8 o'clock service. Isn't it
Go
amazing?
figure, right? Go figure. Thank you. Good text.